This is the weekly roundup presented by the Conversation Project. I'm Jay Clifton Payne. I have 12 stories I'll present to you here, which caught my attention based on your engagement with the Conversation Project's feeds on Facebook and X this week, from Friday, February 28th to Friday, March the 7th. We have Donald Trump, lots of Donald Trump today, a little Andrew Cuomo, and we are going to go back to John Cena, which is actually one of the bigger stories of the entertainment week. We'll explain why that's so big for folks who aren't wrestling fans or Peacekeeper fans, if you will. And we have 12 total stories for this week ending the March of 3rd month, 8th day, March the 3rd, 2025. So what we're going to have for you is stories that, like I said, meet the criteria of being engaging to you in our things you might not have heard section, and stories that we're revisiting to show that they may need some updates or they might just need to be reminded of this weird thing happened this week. I want to thank our sponsor, Ground News. Go to our website and visit our affiliate link. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news. They're offering 40% off their Vantage plan right now to get more news and more perspective. We'll give more deeper detail about Ground News, a tool we use every single day in picking our news, and you may want to use that if you're a news nerd, which I'm sure you are, since you're here. Now, let's get into the headlines for this week. No particular order as they're going on. In fact, they seem to be out of order as they go because there's a lot of Trump things that don't really go chronological, just sort of in the way they turned up when we went through sifting through stories. So bear with us. It's going to be a wild ride. It's going to be a Trumpy ride because we do these things. Let's start off with the first story. No particular order, as you said, but it's the first story that basically started the whole weekend and started this whole week on Trump doing stuff. So this is a good palate cleanser, a good start to what's going on. Happening last Friday, the Oval Office became a stage for intense confrontation between U.S. President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The meeting, intended to finalize a minerals agreement granting the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare earth resources, quickly devolved into a heated exchange. President Trump and Vice President Vance pressed Zelensky to make concessions to Russia and expedite the end of the ongoing conflict, a proposition Zelensky met with some resistance, citing distrust in Russia's adherence to agreements and without U.S. security assurances. Basically, the U.S. is not saying, we got your back, we will be there, we'll make sure they don't go away. They're just saying, we'll make peace happen. So voices got heated, eyebrows got raised, fingers got pointed, and of course the whole memes that is, you don't have the cards and you're not saying thank you enough came to play. Eventually, Vance said, you hadn't said thank you today, and you should wear a suit. And Zelensky took the bait, went back and forth, to which Trump said, you don't have the cards. You can't really push anything. You don't have the cards to do this, which became a theme going for the week. And the cameras rolled on it. When they sent the cameras away, they also sent Zelensky away. Literally, they sent him out of the other room, sent him out of the house, sent him away. The next day, he didn't meet with leaders across the rest of the world. Went to Europe, met with the Prime Minister of England, talked to other folks there, and they have pledged to do more for Zelensky and Ukraine. They have pledged to offer up more money, more time, more things, because they may see themselves in a world where they're not backed up by Big Brother of the United States going forward. Here's what's big about this. The Republicans loved this push because they said Zelensky is basically milking us, U.S., and milked Biden for money, something that's going on. And we don't want to be dealing with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But it also is a Russian invasion of Ukraine, something they've done twice in a couple decades. And the big point is, if Russia can bully around other folks, what keeps them from bullying around other folks that are nearby who may be NATO members? If you're not NATO, I guess it doesn't matter. Or China deciding it's going to take Taiwan because Russia gets away with it. Those are the bigger concerns with this. At this point, Trump just wants the rare earth, loves the rare earth. We need rare earth. And we don't even know if the rare earth minerals, the resources they have, are even there, are worth it. And of course, can we get to them because they may end up in Russian-controlled territory when it's all said and done. Andrew Cuomo is in the news big time, and he is elbowing in to get into some perspective as he wants to be your next mayor for New York City. Now, the former governor has officially announced his candidacy for the 2025 election. He resigned from the governorship in 2021. That was for sexual harassment specifically and being bad at COVID, but lying about it indirectly. And the position himself is a seasoned leader. He's ready to address the city's pressing issues. He's got tackling crime in there, along with job creation and making housing affordable. He, who lives in an $8 $8,200 a month Midtown East apartment, pretty swanky thing, lives in town. So they can't call him a carpetbagger. He also says he registered to vote in New York City in 2023. So for the past year or 2 years, we counted since 2025, he's been a resident voting there in the city. So he's not an outsider coming in. However, the guy who is the insider trying to get all the outsiders out is Mayor Eric Adams, who's facing low poll numbers and a corruption case, but still may win this thing by a big chunk. He criticized Cuomo as a late entry, and all the other guys is running shadow campaigns to basically make him look bad so that people think he's bad. The problem is the policies that they're putting out there, Eric Adams says won't work. He's the guy to do this thing. He just needs this whole indictment thing to be around him so he gets some work done, working for Trump, if you will, going forward. As I said, even with the legal challenges, Adams looks like the front runner for this. He's not looking like he's losing steam. He's looking like he's going to do more. Cuomo may have a shot at taking some name recognition, but the name recognition he has is being kind of a, well, yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens as the primary is up in a few months, and we'll see what happens. They also have ranked choice voting, and I think like at least 12 people on the ballot. So based on what happens, it could be if someone doesn't get the 50% of the votes, it could be a runoff, could be a couple guys. We'll see what happens. And if Cuomo can make his way back into the national spotlight, even though it's New York City, it's still, you see how Eric Adams is doing, a national spot, and redeem his political career. So the actual largest thing that Trump did this week happened on Tuesday. By large, I mean time consuming. And also by large, I mean also set the stage for many things. Now, the Zelensky meeting set the stage for basically the attitude, the swagger for the week. This one was the cherry on top that said, hey, I'm the king and you guys got to deal with it. Happening on March the 4th, President Trump had a delivery of a notable lengthy address to joint session of Congress, not a State of the Union. It's just addressed to Congress because he's only been in for six weeks. He could have called it a State of the Union, but it's not what it is. So, but he did talk about his second term, all 6 weeks of it in great detail, for lots of detail, for about 120 minutes, 1 hour and 40 minutes. That's about 100 minutes, I'd say. 1 hour and 40 minutes. 60 plus 40 is 100, of course. The address set a new record for the longest presidential speech in Congress in recent history. Bill Clinton was beaten by about 20 minutes, I believe. And through the speech, the president highlighted accomplishments for his administration course in 6 weeks, signing nearly 100 executive orders, 400 executive actions, underscoring efforts to reduce federal government size, implementing significant tariffs, and promoting domestic mineral production. He addressed foreign policy matters, including Ukraine, and reassessing U.S.'s involvement in international organizations. He also, gave away some stuff. He gave a honorary Secret Service badge to a young man who was dealing with cancer. He gave a kid who was applying for West Point. He said he got his spot. He's got it there. I guess Trump is a sponsor. He gave highlight to many folks who have dealt with things back and forth. He highlighted a officer for the border officer who did had a whole bunch of years time to himself that he did the thing he did where he points to guys to do stuff. Reagan's been doing that since we've been doing that since Reagan, and Trump's a great guy at doing it because he just likes to show things off. But the actual responses from various folks were mixed. Starting off with the folks in Congress, Republicans cheered, they stood, they were laughing along, doing whatever. The Democrats had some issues. One protest were women dressed in pink. One protest were some people who walked out wearing shirts that said resist. One protest was not clapping a lot, which when you don't clap for a kid with cancer, makes you look bad. And one protest got Al Green, the representative from Texas, kicked out where he shook his cane on early speakings, something that is done very often by Marjorie Taylor Greene, although not a cane, basically speaking out and yelling at the person speaking. This time, Speaker Mike Johnson gaveled him, said we will not have this non-decorum, and sent the sergeant at arms to send him out. They already said they were going to do that. They sent him out. At that point, the Democrats just were quiet for the rest of the night. Bad look all around. However, for people watching the speech, if you watched it and watched all of it, it was a lot. Nothing changed. If you like him, you like him. If you don't, you don't. If you wish he'd go away, you probably still wish he'd go away. Now, no change in pattern is expected to happen from this, although a lot of things happen from Trump just doing things this week. But essentially, you got the bullet points for the highlights for 6 weeks of government, and we're only 6 weeks of government in. We've got a long time to go with this president. 4 years and only 6 weeks down. A lot of shenanigans, a lot of upcoming things for folks who like him. I'm going to say a lot of shenanigans. More to come. Our story, the fourth story for this weekend, is something that's going to take a little time to really bake. Now, the jobs numbers came out yesterday, and the jobs numbers were fine. They were lower than normal for February, but they were fine. But we'll talk about that probably next week because it came in after the cutoff early in the morning on Friday to get into there. But what we had from Thursday were a report where job cuts happened. And the surge, counting the job cuts in February, 245%. And that's due to mostly just literally chainsawing government employee jobs over the last 6 weeks. So that's a big deal. Government layoffs, and they are layoffs. They're not rifts. They're actually firing people. Most of them are being told they're fired for performance, and people being cut because they don't have protections because they're probationary. So it's a layoff. It's not a voluntary leaving of the office. About 151 jobs were lost in the private sector, and reduction of workforce in federal jobs about 62,242 positions. That's a lot of jobs in the span of time. So with the jobs report that's going to come in, jobs that are created in February, kind of gets balanced. We will see what happens next month when you actually can count all of February and have that jobs reports coming out there as well. Now, this is all a Deutsche fault, literally a Deutsche fault. The government agency that's led, in air quotes, by Elon Musk, basically going through various agencies and cutting things down. In fact, we'll talk a bit about what happened with that going forward and cutting things down. He's looking to make big cuts in various places, including Social Security, Department of Defense, IRS, places that are bloated, have extra people, and especially with the Department of Defense and the military-industrial complex, a lot of money going to things that you might wonder why it's going to, and overspending on things because they do. Streamlining operations, reducing government expenditures, those things like that for all agencies, and the big ones especially. Right now, there's backlash because Deutsche is cutting jobs, and we're seeing stories about people who thought they had good performances, just got performance reviews, and the biggest issue, a third of everybody cut by the federal government so far are veterans who got into government service, the GS service, because they could continue their role of being protectors of our nation, serving their country in civil service. They are foregoing, bigger money opportunities out there, though there's only so many opportunities to work for the government and do things better, especially things like work for veterans and work for old people and work for young people. Make sure that all the good things happen. We're going to see how this thing plays out. In the FAFO status of things that happen, the massive things that Donald Trump has done, of course, he pardoned essentially all the people that got indicted, all the people that got involved in the January 6th riot issue. Anybody who got some sort of charge got a pardon. Here's a case where some of those guys probably should not have because they really are just random dudes, but not so great dudes. Now, this is a story highlighting or updating the deputy who was charged or who was facing charges for a fatal shooting in the traffic stop of Indiana man who was pardoned by Trump. The resolution, no charges, as they have released the body cam footage of the incident and pretty much exonerate the incident going forward. Well, questions arise of what exactly happened. We can see exactly what happened, and there's no charges for both deputy officers, the one that actually discharged his weapon, and the other one that was there in the scene as well. Happening in January 26th of 2025, this year, in Rensselaer, Indiana, a traffic stop escalated to a fatal shot with Jasper County Sheriff's Deputy shooting and killing 42-year-old Matthew Huddle. Huddle had been pardoned by President Trump a few days earlier with the big, massive pardon, of course, for a misdemeanor related to that actual riot in 2021. A misdemeanor pardon. It's done. It's done. He's free from any issue there. But the deputy stopped him for speeding upon discovering his status as a habitual traffic violator. Basically had no license. He had a bunch of things on warrants going for arrests for traffic stuff. He attempted to arrest him because habitual traffic violation is a felony. He had a long discussion back and forth. It was like, I can't get in trouble. I got pardoned, blah, 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 blah. But the deputy explained, I can't let this go. If this was a misdemeanor, we could talk about this, but this is a felony for habitual traffic violation. It has nothing to do with your other thing. We need to bring you in. He was standing outside the car. They're having a conversation. Hutto fled the spot, went to his vehicle, and was reaching for his firearm, essentially reaching for a gun he had in there. And in the struggle, was shot multiple times by the deputy. They did find a loaded 9mm handgun and additional ammunition in the vehicle. A lot of the things going forward was he was basically saying, I can't go to jail. I can't do this. Can't go back. A lot of stuff like that. I can't go with you. So which tended to the resisting arrest part. The deputy was found legally justified in using deadly force to defend himself because he didn't know what was happening, and it seemed like he was going for a loaded gun. We saw dash cam video or body cam video from the officer involved in the shooting, and dash cam video from the officer that was basically sitting on the hood of the car waiting for things to happen, being the backup there. No charges being filed by either deputy. This story is now officially over. This is a consequence of, what about all those guys that got pardoned? Are they all really great guys, all good people? Hutto was essentially a bad driver and an irresponsible person. Should he have had his life ended this way? Probably not, but he also should not have resisted arrest. So we talked about Trump and Zelensky and Vance earlier, and some of the things that went through, including a lot of the aftermath of just ripple effects of things going back and forth. The Ukrainians are still fighting the Russians. The Russians have not come to the table. They've come to the table, not really much back and forth because they don't have to. They right now have the United States pushing away the guy that needs to come to the table. That's the Ukrainians. But to keep the fight going, they got to keep fighting. And the U.S. has actually killed intelligence sharing with Ukraine while they're battling the Russians in these war things, fighting back and forth. Also along the lines, the Russians actually had a very massive bombing day coming forward the past this week, and other things to get in Ukraine's way to get things done. But the U.S. has suspended its intelligence sharing with Ukraine officially. This was confirmed by CIA Director John Ratcliffe. Military aid was also halted earlier. They cut funding directly to the Ukrainians as well, because this is Trump's way of basically pulling more cards out of Zelensky's hands so that he would come to negotiate with Russia. Although he's not negotiating with Russia, he's signing a deal over with the United States so they can go negotiate with Russia, which is not what anybody actually wants. So this suspension hampers their ability to track targets and see how they can do Russian military movements to basically fight back against what's happening there. That's one issue. The bigger question is, European allies are wondering, well, if they cut Ukraine off in the middle of a war where the Russians are attacking right now, what will they do for us? Which was happening after the Europeans said they're going to bolster more and do more for Ukraine. This is something that happened later in the week. So while they're already pledging to do more and try to be more engaged because the U.S. might not be there, they're finding the U.S. may not be there for them a lot sooner than anybody thinks. We're going to see how this thing plays out because I believe they've also lost their Starlink as well. I think that's a story that we have queued up from yesterday that we'll see if it bubbles in for next week. Ukraine's did not have much in the cards, which is true, which is why the United States was bolstering them up. But they were plucky enough to withstand what should have been a 2-week offensive and then the Russians rolling in for about a good couple months until they got more backup from U.S. and the Europeans. And now they can't quite get rid of them. Russia is there. They can't push them out completely. And they want peace. They want to end it. They want it done. The problem is Russia doesn't want peace. Russia wants all of Ukraine. And apparently we're playing into Russia's hands by offering them up as much Ukraine as we possibly can and offering Ukraine as little play as play possibly can. Let's talk about us for just a quick minute, a quick pause from the news stories. 6 down, 6 more to go from the week. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing, we need your help to make more people see what we're seeing. This particular show is produced and published out live on the weekends and in a live feed, but you can see it whenever you want to. So what we need you to do to get more people to see this one and all our stuff is to like, share, and subscribe. for the weekly roundup, like this video here, and you like the video, the algorithms will share it up with more people to see into what's going on. YouTube will send it to more people that hopefully will see it and like it as well. And if you share it with like-minded people, people who like this type of news coverage, who like this type of commentary, even with the nose issues today, it's got a little bit of a cold, apologize for that. We'll have more people who can like it as well and join in what we call the News Nerd Nation. People want to be engaged in news stories when the mainstream media, not so much for their fault, but because they've got to sell eyeballs, they got to get people in, are covering and over covering some of the stories because they got to make sure the big headline news is covered whenever somebody turns on, as opposed to getting some of the smaller stories, more interesting stories, and stories that are just so darn out there that once you hear it, it's like, man, I'm glad I heard that because now I have something to talk about. Also, if you're not getting this video, our audio replays, our TikToks, whatever in your feeds, subscribe to us wherever you want to, your best source. Go to our website, this is theconversationproject.com, and see all the sources you can find us. Subscribe so you get to see us as we come natural, not just wait for us to randomly pop up in your feed. We want to be a part of your world. A part of your world. We want to be a part of what you have going on, and so don't do that. We need you in there. So like what we're doing to show me that we're doing good stuff, show algorithms that the people should see it, and show me that I got the right things in there. Share it with more people like-minded, and subscribe so you don't miss out on a moment. Tariffs. Oh, yes, we got the tariffs. Now, this is going to be an interesting story because tariffs flip-flopped all week long. Trump actually on a few days ago, we're doing it on Saturday, on Wednesday, I believe, on the 4th, just read from notes, the 4th, actually, or the tariffs were set to go into effect on the 4th, and they got pushed back another month. So they're not going into effect until till April the 4th for 25% onto Canada and Mexico. Now, we will see how this goes, if they can work on some back and forths. This was pushed specifically because someone realized that car parts and cars go back and forth across the borders many times, and that's a tariff many times onto those things to add prices in multiples. Not just a car costs more money, but the pieces cost more money, to the pieces cost more money, to the pieces cost more money, and so that worked out to be an issue. General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis really pushed for this push to say, hey, we need to figure out something to do going forward because everything's going up, like in multiples. This isn't just the other stuff. Now, what got a little weird was going into the weekend, Trump actually said, you know what? I think I'm going to actually put some tariffs on milk and timber for Canada because they're not treating us nice. And Canada also finally took the booze off the shelf from the United States this week, so that happened as well. So I think that's where it's going. They also was no reprieve for the Chinese. They got the extra 10% this week regardless. So their extra money is there. And so the extra funds that will be rolling in from China, which won't, already are in effect. But Mexico and Canada, despite having lots of great conversations and going back and forth with what's happening, an actual pretty good conversation and pretty good relationship between Sheinbaum of Mexico and Trump of us, U.S., yet the tariffs are still an issue. The tariffs are probably they're being used as a bargaining chip that keep being pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And at some point in time, it's going to seem like it's either the flip-flop of the year or not a real bargaining chip if you keep pushing them back, if they're really not there. Trump maybe not believe in tariffs, though he says he loves them, and he's loved them for like all his life. They're not working out as well because he's not using them the way he wants to. He's using them to get people to back away from stuff, not just using them to make money. Trump is a big proponent of getting off the income tax and doing something that's more of a consumption-like tax, not quite flat tax, as you may remember when Forbes guy wanted to do, but essentially tax on the stuff you buy, which would be fine if there was no big income tax and if stuff didn't cost so much right now. The big issue is the tariff back and forth is not making America happy. It's not making the markets happy, not making the consumers or the producers happy, and it's not bringing down the cost of eggs at all. Let's move on to some Musk news, which brings us to, with all the doage he's doing right now, who's actually running SpaceX? Now, this isn't so much a Musk did this problem, but there's issues with the capsules that he's using, which may cause some ripple effects to us, U.S., because we're going to go away from us, U.S., building our own things via NASA and more collaborations with some private entity folks. And this may mean Blue Origin and his chick flight may be a way to produce some sort of push to needle their way into more government contracts, as Musk right now is needling his way into as many contracts he can with SpaceX and everything else. Now, what actually happened was a test launch on the 6th of the Starship, the 8th test launch they had, resulted in an extreme failure with the second spacecraft blowing up. Exploded mid-flight over the Caribbean Sea and caused for about 4 hours a closing of airspace because there are planes in the sky where bits of debris falling through. In fact, some of the pictures we see, I think this one right here is a picture taken from a plane that was in the sky when they saw the rocket go up and they saw it exploded and things like that, which is bad for airplanes flying through the airspace around Miami. It's bad. About 8 minutes into the mission, it lost communication with the Starship, which led to destruction there. The Super Heavy booster, the cool thing that flies up, gets it into the low orbit and comes back down and lands itself, gets caught, it worked fine. That test was a success. It's getting the actual piece of equipment that must go into space, that's the problem. They had a failure in January of the same thing, basically similar sort of things due to hardware vibrations. And of course, they actually delayed this flight at least once this week to make sure that they had all issues covered, and they did not. Ironically, the FAA has to investigate this thing because there was a launch in the United States that led to shutting down of airspace in Florida. So the FAA has to be a part of this, even though the FAA, if you had not heard, is essentially firing all people that work for the FAA. We'll see how that works out. Despite these setbacks, SpaceX says that a number of things actually work well, including the Super Heavy booster, and they're learning from their failure. The future is bright for SpaceX going forward. Like they said, for anything, like, say there's one more thing that doesn't work, so now I have to figure out something different to make it work better. These large ships are right now just what we're using to send stuff back and forth to the space station, but eventually they will send cargo and humans to the moon, to the Mars, and beyond that stuff. That's the point of this one. Elon wants to go to Mars. He wants to make this thing happen, and it takes time to get there. And he's leaning on the government so he has someone to help him pay for and a reason to go to Mars, not just, hey, let's go to Mars. Okay, guys, let's do it. If these things don't work, and they can't even get up to the International Space Station without messing things up, we're never going to Mars. We're probably not going to Mars in my lifetime, but we're never going to get there at this rate. Oh yeah, we're not done with Trump quite yet. He issued a very tough speaking, some big words, as last warning, if you will, to Hamas to release all hostages as U.S. holds direct talks. Now, I'm going to freestyle on this one because that's the only way I can deal with this one, because it really is a bit convoluted and gets long and detailed in the words. But President Trump issued a, let's say, stern ultimatum to Hamas. He is demanding the immediate release of all hostages held in Gaza. Just everybody, let them go now. He said that before when they delayed the last batch from going into not phase 1 into phase 2. But he said right now, we need all of these guys released, all these people released right now. The quote is, release the hostages now or they'll be held to pay. Now, what's really odd about this is negotiations are being facilitated in Qatar and by various members that have been going back and forth. But the United States is now actually directly in negotiations with Hamas, like not a go-between with Qatarians. They are just sitting at the table talking to Hamas directly, whoever's in charge right now. A special envoy was sent there to work on this, to go directly with them, including get some American citizens out, because there's still American citizens who are there. And the mostly morbid part about it is the bodies of people who died, some in the abduction and some over time, are still being released, so their remains must be there. We know about last week when they released the remains of a mother and 2 children, only to find that the mother's remains were the wrong remains, and then they had to say, oops, sorry, here are the right remains, things like that. Hamas, as a terror organization, fairly good at blowing stuff up and killing people, not very good at running the nation. We see that from the Taliban. Not very good at running Afghanistan, but very good at being, terrorists and forcing women not to have any rights. Same thing with here. Now, the ultimate goal of the Riviera of the desert, we'll see if that happens. But right now, ceasefire negotiations have stalled. The Hamas leaders are saying that the Israelis are breaking their pieces for the next phase. Israelis are like, we're not leaving until this thing is going our way going forward. And they have the U.S. to back them up so they have a little bit more hands, more cards, if you will. Negotiations are influx. And whether you are living in, in somewhere in an urban area, somewhere in a rural area where you think your guy on the streets, you think none of this stuff matters to you, or you start guy in the country that says, why are we dealing with these people doing this stuff way out there? It matters. It matters a lot. It matters to a point where at some point in time, although we have two oceans between most of us, sometimes these guys could come here and start blowing our stuff up. Or it matters in just having friends and having trade partners, having places to go. If you want to take that trip to Israel someday and see the lands that Jesus walked, it has to be there. And you probably want to be there without shells being fired around you in a tourist spot. It makes a difference. It makes a big difference whether there's a Trump branded golf course or not in the area. It still makes a difference. International community is watching what's happening closely, as this place is a powder keg. And of all the targets where World War III could be, this is one that most people don't want to be engaged in because they don't want this smoke. We're going to see how this one plays out. Hopefully better sooner. The LA Council has upheld the controversial firing of the former chief of fire chief Kristen Crowley. By a vote of 13-2, Mayor Karen Bass's decision to fire Fire Chief Kristen Crowley has been upheld by the City Council. It is the law of the land. Bass dismissed Crowley back in February, on the 21st, following the devastating Palisades fire, which resulted in a significant loss of life and property. The actual charges against her being unworking for the fire department. Well, she sent home 1,000 firefighters on the first day of the fires, who should have been doing something in her case, and then did not want to do an after-action report to say what could have went wrong, what could have went better, what do we do that we really should not do anymore. Of course, there is back and forth with Mayor Bass, who was not in town when the fires began. She was in Africa at a ceremony that was a coronation or a inauguration of someone there as part of a one of those city sister city things. And so she was not there running the show when things started. She came in a day or so late into that one, and she's blaming Crowley, the fire chief, for just not being ready for it. There's plenty of blame to go around, although just throwing random blame at Bass and at Gavin Newsom just because they're Democrats isn't helping anything. We'll see how the thing plays out going forward. Arguments were heard from both sides. Considering the public testimonies, the City Council just voted to uphold the dismissal because it's aligned with Bass's assessment of the situation. They did not take it in well to begin with. They didn't start it off right, so the finish was already doomed to fail. Mixed reactions. Firefighters unions are, of course, really, really mad at Mayor Bass. They're also repeating the mantra that Crowley is a scapegoat for systematic issues and not having enough funding for the fire department in general, just not having resources ready to go. This is just papering over what Bass should have done earlier and got more resources for the fire department when she started her job as the mayor. Supporters for Bass say decisive action from the actual fire chief led to critical failures in critical emergency systems, so no one can fix something because of bad ideas and bad decisions early on by the fire chief. This will still be in the ether for a bit. I mean, even though Crowley's not getting her job back, there's a lot of fixes that must be done in the fire department for Los Angeles and some other places, municipalities as well. You may be dealing with something like this in your city where there are officials who aren't getting along very well and fighting back and forth, and the efficiency of the work not being done. Hopefully a lesson can be learned. Most likely, same old, same old. Remember when we said that China was running the Panama Canal and we needed to take it back? Well, one guy said that. We're closer to China not running the canal. I'm not sure if we're taking it back or not, because BlackRock has secured a deal to bring the canal ports back in control of U.S. companies. BlackRock has a partnership with Global Infrastructure Partners and Terminal Investment Limited, and those big money spenders have agreed to acquire the majority stake of C.K. Hutchinson's holdings. These are the port operations that include Panama Ports Company, essentially run by the Chinese, for about $22.8 billion. The consortium will control 43 ports across the world, 23 countries specifically, and the most notable are the Balboa and Cristobal ports, which are right there on both ends of the Panama Canal. So not just buying Panama's ports, they're buying a whole bunch of other ports to make it a big actual investment, but the acquisition is in the strategic interest of Donald Trump, putting the U.S. or U.S.-owned companies in charge of both sides of the canal so that things go forward. Now, what must be done? These new owners have to actually put in the money for infrastructure for the canal and for the ports back and forth. They have to pay for it. The presiding wisdom before for Chinese coming in and investing was, we want to throw a lot of money at something. And Panama was like, cool, we got that. And then we have dealt with those issues for a while. But then Trump's like, why is China running our ports? Why are they running everything? Because U.S. is not putting money into it. So as Trump said earlier, they're going to basically reclaim it, and they started to rework it. We'll see if they're going to take back the actual canal, which was given to Panama in a treaty by, of course, that guy, Jimmy Carter. But we're going to see what happens going forward. Now, the president of Panama, Jose Raul Mulino, refuted claims of external control over the canal, asserting that the Panama Canal is not in the process of being reclaimed. The canal is Panamanian and will continue to be under the Panamanian control. So there's that. But the ports on both sides will be under control of a new company, which is mostly American. International, maybe, but mostly American. We will see what happens going back and forth in this one, because it literally is a back and forth through the canal, because, as Trump says, it was made for us. It was made for international trade, but it was made for us, so we should have more control over it. We shall see. And finally, what was one of the biggest stories of the week, and let me go deeper into on why it was such a big story for those folks who aren't fans of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock Johnson, if you want to see him that way, John Cena, the actor, or even Travis Scott, or professional wrestling and itself. This is a spectacle that was a long time coming. No one thought it was going to come because the way things are written. John Cena is one of the storied members of the WWE, and of course is known for holding a world record. I'm sure it was a world record, but a record number of Make-A-Wish Foundation dreams. Basically, he spends like 3 or 4 times a day just stopping, making wishes, and going back to filming Peacemaker and other stuff. Now, he is on a farewell tour of the WWE. He's getting old. He's, in his 40s. So, and he's got movie star stuff to do, and he's getting, he's not doing full-time wrestling stuff. He can't be in that stuff, although people love him or hate him to be there. So he's doing a big-time farewell tour to do some things and bring some people in, the fans that love him going forward. And in this case, he's trying to go for one more shot to beat the record of Ric Flair to get the most world championships. Ric Flair has 17, so John Cena has to get that 17th to get that to tie, to get past that. But what happened was, the road to WrestleMania and a shot against Cody Rhodes was a long one. He lost in the Royal Rumble, a really big battle royal where the person who throws most people out of the ring gets a shot at one of the champions. That was one guy. He chose the other champion. The next shot was this elimination chamber, this big steel cage thing with plastic pods, whatever, that people beat each other up with and throw folks out of. John Cena got the win in this one because it was projected, because, the money goes that way. Meanwhile, a man named Dwayne Johnson, basically the most famous professional wrestler going out there in the big times, and who's not named Stone Cold or Hulk Hogan, has done this little thing where he's turned from the face everybody loves to the final boss. He's actually a board member of the company that owns WWE, that's TKO, and he's come in as this bad guy who's just kind of roll things around. He takes matches from people, does whatever, and he wants to take the current champion, a guy named Cody Rhodes, the son of the plumber, yes, son of Dusty Rhodes, and wants him to be his champion, make sure he takes him to greater heights and things. But he has to, pay up with his soul. You sell your soul to me, Dwayne, and you can get anything you want. Maybe a failure refrain for selling your soul to the devil, or in this case, The Rock. After the event where John Cena won the Elimination Chamber, there was a meeting where Cody Rhodes has to say what was going to say what's going to happen. Cody Rhodes comes out, shakes hands with John Cena because they're going to fight in WrestleMania in a few months. The Rock comes out with Travis Scott, because of course, and offers up the deal. Okay, Cody Rhodes, it's time. Be my champion. Give me your soul. Pretty much how it went. I think I did a good deal on that one. Cody Rhodes said, my soul belongs to the fans. I don't own my soul. I can't give you my soul. I won't give you my soul. Go F yourself. Yeah, pretty much what happened. And so John Cena, being the continual good guy, was like all happy and like, dude, we got this. Two good guys. We're fighting this thing off. They're hugging each other. And then this face just goes over. And then The Rock does the slash motion. And then John Cena destroys Cody Rhodes, siding with a guy he actually battled with for quite some time and doesn't actually like very much, The Rock. Interesting. We shall see how this thing plays out. I don't know why that happened. It just sort of, I should have turned my phone off, but apparently I got a message. Hopefully the group chat won't go nuts in the next little bit. Luckily, this is the last story in the list. The Rock and John Cena are now allied with Travis Scott to face Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas. Now, this is something that's been hyped for a while because they wanted to see this. They want one last run for John Cena to do this, and basically John Cena to do the actual loss and hand over the torch of the ultimate good guy to Cody Rhodes, so he can keep playing that good guy character for a while. They're waiting for Rhodes to have a heel turn because it's about time. But Cena allowed them to have a face versus face match, and for them to raise hands together and have a good time because the new reign from the new nation, the new generation is there. And now we get a chance to do the same thing, I guess, but we'll see John Cena in the role of a heel, or they suspect he will double cross The Rock in the end to make it actually, worthy, and he can go off and still be a nice guy. We shall see. If you're not a wrestling fan, if you're not a fan of drama or soap opera or something like that, you might want to just peek in and see what's going on around WrestleMania, because money. It's all about money. It's all about things. And if you are a fan of movies, if you've watched Peacemaker, John Cena, who did that great movie, did Aquafina on I think it was Amazon Prime, where he was protecting the lottery winner, things like that. John Cena seems like a great guy. Don't know him, but seems like a great guy. Like I said, has all these Make-A-Wish Foundation things happening, and is trying to move on to his next role, his next things. The Rock did the same thing. He went off, did movies, got big there, then came back for his farewell tour where he was kind of out of thing, and he took over and became a champion to do one last run and do one last promotion on that end. John Cena's doing the same thing, but it looks like the storyline was supposed to be for him to basically face Cody and give him the ultimate pickup as two good guys fighting each other for the greatness of the sport. Now it's a guy who is conflicted, a guy who is an evil boss, a rapper who nobody really understands why he's there, but we're for it. And Cody Rhodes, the son of the plumber, who finished the story last year, and this year has to cement where his actual role will go forward. So, 12 stories caught my attention from your engagement last week. You guys actually engaged a lot with John Cena because that was a really big deal. WrestleMania and WWE, of course, hyping it because that's what they do. But there is so much response to this being a very large ESPN segment on this one, and Fox Sports as well, covering this story as a news story. It's a legit news story in entertainment. Obviously, it's scripted, it's predetermined, it's going along a storyline, but it was something that a lot of people got into. It's maybe not as prescripted as Chiefs wins, but you get the gist. But if you want to see how your stories are actually pre-scripted or post-scripted or not scripted at all, which some cases you can argue to any way they're going, we want you to check out our sponsor for this video, for this weekend work, which is called Ground News. Ground News will offer you the way to get beyond the headlines, beyond all of the bias, because you can see exactly what people are talking about. For local, national, or global stories, your first news source need to be Ground News, because all the world's news is heavy there. So the full story can be provided by going to Ground News and seeing what you're looking for, searching for the headline, searching for the storyline you're looking for. They're going to offer you a way to see stories as presented by various different news sources, various different places, owned by various folks with various different ideologies and thoughts on how they want to present things. To be basic, some folks are more right, some folks are more left, and some things are supposed to be in the middle, like the news organizations. AP tends to be in the middle, despite not wanting to call the Gulf of Mexico Gulf of America. So they try to stick things down to, what the world wants to hear in basic detail. What you do is you take the story and you see where it goes. You see if it's covered more by right-leaning coverage, and you see how they're covering it, and more left-leaning coverage and how they're covering it. And you can use their blind spot feature to see what stories are being literally not shown to you in whatever silo you're looking at. What stories are being exclusively done by the Reds and exclusively done by the Blues for reasons that may be nefarious or reasons that may just be no one thinks it's worth talking about. You can stay informed on any story out there, local, national, or global, with reliable, diverse sources. Literally all the sources, they are there. And what you get from Ground News and all this great coverage directly from us is a deal. 40% off the Vantage plan. 40% off. It's a big plan for covering all the news, all the details, all the facts. You can get there through Ground News. So get that by using our affiliate link. We get a small commission because it's an affiliate link at thisistheconversationproject.com/ground news. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news. Get in on the action. News nerds unite and figure out your own news coverage. Get the app on your phone or check it out on your website. It's news beyond the headlines because it's all the headlines. You see all the coverage and you can make your own decisions. You can literally do your own research with Ground News. Conversation Project lives online at thisistheconversationproject.com, our online home where we give you a chance to give us the freshest perspective on news. We offer up news stories every 50 minutes on feeds on Facebook and X. We'll get to those in a moment. And we let you engage in them. You tell us what stories are worthy of talking about. The 12 stories we had here were worthy stories that were presented of the 68 or so stories we presented all last week in things you might not have heard. That's the daily show we do that goes through news stories that keeps you up to date what's going on. The stories that you say are conversational, not just the stories I pull off a rundown someplace or I watch Fox News and just repeat those stories, or get a trending topic list and do it from there. These are stories that we put out all day long to see if you think you want to talk about them, and we pick the ones that we think will be the best. Now, before we go into details on how all that works, quick shout out to our partners. We do this every single week where we give our partners a little bit of love. These are people who have pledged financially directly to help us keep things going for the Conversation Project. They include Harold Braxton, Kobe Green, and Eldon Kidd at the Cup of Coffee level, and the Spare Change level is Joy Winters. Go to our website, thisistheconversationproject.com/partnerships, or go directly to buymeacoffee.com/jclevelandpayne and join in on the tier for coffee if you want to give us some promotions. If you go to our website, there are links for one-time donations via Venmo and Cash App and PayPal, things like that. If you just want to do one shot, that's great. We take it. We'd like to be good stewards of your funds. We'll give you a shout out if you do that as well. And we will do what we can to do things better here going forward. We have been blessed over the years we do this to gather more means for revenue service. We have people who go to our sponsors page and they buy from there. We get a commission there. We have more things coming in revenue from our generations of our podcasts and from our videos. Monetization is good, so it works. But we can use a little extra help so we can become one of those larger tiered stations, larger tiered channels, larger tiered promotions that can offer up more stuff. I'm a one-man operation that gets help from various people when they have time and when I have the resources to give to them, because I don't believe in people working for free. So, even though I'm working for free. If you want to help out with that, become a partner, visit our sponsors, ask me what you can do to help. We can do with that one. Now, in the asking part, here are the calls to action. Once again, our website, thisistheconversationproject.com. Our email address, theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Email us with whatever you want to. You don't have to be a partner to give in your input. We take all input from the email address and we put that into play. And we do actually read the mean ones and consider them for a bit, even though we know they're mean. Now, the feeds we said. We're on Facebook and X, where every 50 minutes or so we post a news article from various sources. Facebook.com/thisistheconversationproject. And x.com/th_conversation. You just have to follow us on our feeds. And when a story comes in that pops into your feed, or go check to see directly what stories you're covering if you're not seeing us very, very often, because sometimes we don't, engage in the stories that seem engaging. The stories you think are conversational, we should talk about, engage. Click the emoji or the whatever symbol that goes along with it based on what you're doing. On Twitter, on X, it's just a heart. On Facebook, it's all the range of emojis. Share it with other folks who might like the story. Engage in it by commenting so we have conversations inside of those feeds. Do what you do to engage in the stories. The higher the engagement score, literally the more times they get touched, better chance we have to talk about these stories later on. For Monday through Friday, for Monday specifically, there's 10 stories, and Tuesday through Friday, there's 8 stories in things you might have heard. They go through stories from the past iteration. Monday does the weekend, so there's extra 2 stories. Tuesday through Friday, it's just the previous day. We take for Monday from the top 30 stories of the weekend, and for the rest of the week, the top 15 stories of the day, and pluck out the right stories into the actual program. 10 for Monday, 8 for the rest of the week. And that's what goes there. And then for this thing here, on Friday afternoon or so, sometimes a little early if I can get things done, I'll go through the headline list that we had for the week and see which ones sort of make the cut, which sort of jump out at me. And then we whittle down those then to 12 stories. And you only through 5 days worth of work. We'll get about 16 to 17 stories out there. We'll knock out the extra ones till we have 12 to make sure the ones that seem the biggest. We have misses sometimes. We'll pick a story that you didn't really particularly want to talk about, or you want to talk about something more specifically, and you can have me tell me what to do to fix it next time by emailing me at the conversation inbox at gmail.com. You talk about the stories that we did cover, we didn't cover, or stories that we may or may not have put out there in the feeds in the first place. Because sometimes it's all about timing. It really is about time. We put some out there early that nobody jumps onto, and then it comes a big story later on. Or something will be out there that's a big story for a while. It'll take us for a while to really get into it and understand it. Or we just are packed with stories, and then we'll get to it when it's really out of the range of people caring about it. It's no longer as conversational. It's what's conversational now. You make the call. We do our best to fit the call. Well, thank you so much for being a part of our show today. This has been the weekly roundup for the week ending March the 8th, 2025. Thank you for being a news nerd. Thank you for sticking around with all this stuff. Thank you for dealing with the cold and the clicks and the buttons. This was the third time we had to try to roll on this one. So hopefully there's less sniffling, sneezing, coughing, guffawing, and those ums and ahs. We are glad to have you as part of the family. Make sure you're staying limber, staying hydrated, and staying on task for all the grand things you must do. Life is a marathon. Please, please, please do what you can. Do not turn it into a sprint. Love you. Mean it. We have 5 days of things you might not have heard. We hope we have 5 days. We keep missing days because of odd things, but hopefully 5 days of things you might not have heard, which you can see on this channel that you're watching this here. And of course, the weekly roundup we'll see the 12 stories of the week that for next week, I thought were the most conversational based off of your conversation, if you will. What stories will make that cut next week? We'll have to wait 7 days to find out. That will happen, of course, on the 15th of March, 2025. But till then, love you. Mean it. Have great days. Follow us on our feeds. Let us know what's going on. Email me with what you need me to work on, and be good to each other. Try that.